All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media outside of the practice fields at Gillette Stadium, where the Patriots just wrapped up day 3 of training camp. A reminder, we are powered by our good friends over at Prize Picks. Head over there, use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Taylor, Patriots just wrapped up day 3, as we said. Not a ton going on. It was a glorified walkthrough session. No
walkthrough.
Yeah. No helmets for anybody besides the quarterbacks when they were walking through plays, just to get the communication down, etc. But we did hear from Mike Vrabel before practice, who told us that Ja'Lynn Polk, still not out here, by the way. Different circumstances surrounding him and why he's not out here. Said practice is important, but that they can also take away from inside meetings, getting him back up to speed. So we'll see if he ends up back on the field on day 4 when the Patriots get out here tomorrow for what is supposed to be a higher intensity day. We'll mention that a little bit later, but still no Ja'Lynn Polk out here. But the big thing from Vrabel, I thought, was his mention of Christian Wilkins, the defensive tackle who just signed with the Las Vegas Raiders last offseason, was released, cut yesterday. For something along the lines of not correctly rehabbing or what have you. So he's set to become a free agent, and someone asked Mike Vrabel if they'd be willing to potentially kick the tires on Christian Wilkins. Said they'll have that conversation. Also mentioned his connection to him when he was at Ohio State. He recruited Wilkins out of high school, who was went to from Springfield High School in Connecticut, so local guy. So it'll be interesting if the Patriots actually do kick the tires on him. What do you make of it? What do you think of the fit? And what do you also make of what Mike Vrabel had to say about them actually potentially going after a guy like him?
I was kind of surprised because initially I'm thinking, okay, you got Barmore, you got Milton Williams. Keon White's also going to factor into the interior rush. So I'm just thinking, I don't really know where Christian Wilkins slots, especially as someone who is projected to be a starter for the Raiders. Now, that said, if his foot injury is significant, and he's also going to turn 30 in December. So this is a player where maybe if injuries are a factor and age is a factor, he could be open to more of a rotational role. So if you're thinking, okay, maybe Barmore plays nose tackle in a loaded front instead of a Kairos Tonga, or maybe he replaces a Jeremiah Farms. Again, I think this would depend on Christian Wilkins being able to accept that he would not be a main piece, but I'm sure if they did bring him in, they'd want him to play as much as humanly possible. So again, I was a bit surprised, but at the same time, if you want to play more 5-man fronts, it's going to be a 4-3 defense, but when you go to a 4-3, what's called under, that's how you essentially get one more guy on the line of scrimmage. So in those cases, yeah, I'm all for getting just 3 absolute monsters on the interior, but of course there's also the element of Christian Wilkins is going to have to pass the physical. Yeah. So there's a lot of steps before we get to there, but the Mike Vrabel connection, I mean, the fit makes a lot of sense. It's just whether Christian Wilkins is healthy enough to even be added, and also where exactly he would slot in this rotation and who would get bumped off the roster.
It'd be fascinating to see because, again, you add that guy to that defensive front of Barmore, of Keon White. Obviously, Milton Williams comes over this offseason. I know there might not be enough space, enough playing time for all 4 guys, 5 guys, what have you, but that type of front would be dominant, so we'll see if they can end up making something like that happen. He did also mention, or was asked about rather, Matt Collins, who also another wide receiver who hasn't been out here, gave a little bit more on him in terms of like the player, or the person he is rather, said that while they haven't been able to see him and evaluate him on the field, they see him in the locker room. He's here all the time. So I think that's important to note, just the 2 wide receivers out here are not practicing, Ja'Lynn Polk, Matt Collins. Both guys kind of seemingly in good graces with Mike Vrabel. I think his note on Ja'Lynn Polk saying that he can still get stuff done outside of practice, and obviously it's important, is a little bit more promising, knowing that they actually have a plan for him. So we'll see what happens in the wide receiver room. As far as that, Ja'Lynn Polk, like we said, was out. Other note on attendance, Carlton Davis returns to practice today. Mike Vrabel was asked about him as well, and kind of what their plan is for him. Said it was just a maintenance day, which I know we talked about it. I'll let you kind of have the floor, but what are your thoughts on Davis being on NFI, being cleared, coming out here for 1 day, and then obviously having a maintenance day on day number 2?
Just considering Carlton Davis is the one free agent where I'd have probably the most skepticism, just because they gave him a lot of money, an older player. He does get injured a lot, and it's typically like different types of injuries. It's not even like it's one thing that's recurring. Like last year, he broke his jaw. So it is a bit discouraging that he needs a maintenance day, you know, in a no pads practice. Right. But at the same time, it's so early in training camp.
100%.
Like even with Polk, we can say it's disappointing, but you want to be a little cautious about making too big a deal of this. Because one thing, if you think about it, like Ja'Lynn Polk wasn't out here, but one thing, Mike Vrabel kind of related Polk's situation to Jared Wilson, where Jared Wilson didn't really do anything in terms of participating in drills back in the spring. He was really off to the side learning, and Vrabel said he used that time to really prepare himself and get out here to participate. And with Polk, like he was out here during walkthroughs in the spring and now isn't. So again, this lost time isn't insignificant,
Right.
but you don't want to, put too many eggs in the basket of, oh, no, hit the alarm or anything like that. We still got a lot of time for these guys to prove that they deserve a roster spot.
Vrabel mentioning the install as far in Polk's situation was interesting to me because, yes, it's you want to be out here, you want to be getting conditioned with the guys and kind of understanding spacing and where you have to be in the certain offense in the system, whatever. But if he can get out here once the pads come on and he's learning the install off the field and knows where he's supposed to be and is just ramming up to speed, I don't really see a problem with him taking his time right now.
Right.
But if he can't get out here and it's kind of back and forth and he doesn't have the playbook down, that's where it starts to get concerning. So we'll obviously see what happens there. But, yeah, the Carlton Davis note I thought was just interesting, too. It is super early, but the fact that they pulled him off the list, gave him a maintenance day, knowing, or you would assume knowing that today was also going to be a light day, means that he's potentially, a little bit more behind the eight ball than you'd like him to be, but another one that we'll have to just wait and see and continue monitoring as practice ramps up tomorrow into pads starting next week. Let's start with the offense here as a whole, Taylor. I know, slow day, not a ton to glean, but I think the big thing, once again, before the pads come on, is these offensive line combinations. We saw mostly the same front today, but a little bit different as far as the rotation on the interior, and then one note on the tackle position as well. So what do you see, and what do you take from it?
So the biggest difference, the receivers are pretty much the same. You had the main grouping of Kayshawn Boutte, Stephon Diggs, then Demario Douglas in the slot. And actually, we saw Kyle Williams and believe Kendrick Bourne as well on another field. So it wasn't a perfect example of how exactly these rotations are going to look.
Yep.
But I will say Jared Wilson, for the first time that we've seen, played all three interior line spots. Mike Vrabel gave him a lot of credit for being a guy that learns very quickly and his ability to pick up both center and guard, a position that Garrett Bradbury said, he has flashcards. He's still trying to pick up and really understand how this offensive line, the protection and blocking schemes actually work. So Jared Wilson spending time at right guard for the first time. Also Demontre Jacobs at left tackle for the first time this summer. Now, Demontre Jacobs has a history at both tackle spots, so it's not necessarily surprising, but it was notable just given we've almost exclusively seen him at right tackle. I don't even know if back in the spring he played a ton of left, maybe a little bit, but again, just the first time in the summer that we've seen that.
Yeah, the interesting on that too is, or something I like to see rather from the offensive line group, the camaraderie. We talk about it a lot, especially in these first couple days, because you don't really see the pads on and what they're going to be able to do on the field. But you see Morgan Moses and Trey Jacobs once again come off the field together in that last group signing autographs, which I will note from the Patriots in general on a slow day, I thought it was really nice to see them come out here, stay with the fans, give them what they want because they didn't give a ton on the field. But also the last person out here, Layden Robinson, signing autographs for everybody. He's kind of having a tough time getting into that rotation, but he's still out here giving the fans what they want, so I thought that was pretty cool. But the Morgan Moses, Trey Jacobs connection, I think, is something to keep an eye on as well here. One more thing on the offensive line. Garrett Bradbury spoke after practice, who has kind of been involved in that rotation with Jared Wilson. He was an awesome quote. He gave a ton of good insight on how he's trying to pick up this offensive system with Josh McDaniels, how different it is from the stuff he's seen the last 7 years when he was in Minnesota, and that he even bought a bunch of flashcards and was kind of swimming in April in it because he didn't really know what was going on, but he slowly started to pick things up. Mentioned how the mic calls are different and how they sometimes use it as a disguise. It comes from the quarterback, it's then relayed, and it's on the center to kind of help switch things up. So I just thought he gave a ton of really cool stuff that you don't always see, especially from a Patriots press conference, to be frank. So I thought that was interesting to see. But
especially coming from a West Coast offense.
Right.
Because McDaniel's system is pretty unique. There's not I don't know many people, if any, that are running McDaniel's exact offense, and most people are running that West Coast. So even for an older veteran, it is interesting that being in this new system isn't just a walk in the park. Usually you hear it's terminology. Football's always the same. Bradbury was like, nah, man, this is not easy, but right. I'm making my way.
100%. One more exciting thing that I'm looking forward to seeing in the Patriots offense, it's kind of crazy, but Jack Westover. I'm curious to see what happens with him when the pads come on, when they actually start running through, high-intensity plays, which we'll see tomorrow and then into Monday with the pads, because he's been that number 2 tight end with Austin Hooper out. He's getting a lot of run, kind of because he has to, because he's the next guy on the depth chart, but he's had a couple connections with Drake Mayo the first couple days, a bunch today, granted in a walkthrough session. So I'm kind of wondering, will he actually be able to factor in as that third tight end ahead of guys like Jaheim Bell and the 2 DFAs that they brought in?
Yeah, I mean, it's not insignificant because Jaheim Bell wasn't ahead of him, and you would think, if anything, that would be the case. I don't think any of these guys are going to factor in much as receivers. Again, it's still very early, but we haven't seen anything in terms of receiving talent from this group outside of a really good G. Scott catch yesterday. But then when you go back to the spring, he also had some tough drops as well, so there's no consistency there. But like you said, when the blocking comes out, then we're going to see, okay, how does this rotation work out? Is it Jack Westover consistently, or do we see a week of Jack Westover and then maybe a C.J. Dupree carves out a role for himself as that unique blocker and gets more playing time. So, yeah, I think the pads are ultimately going to be what decides how this rotation works out beyond Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, because we just haven't really seen a lot from that position.
We'll wrap up with some thoughts on the defensive side of the ball in just a second, but first, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. We'll be right back. CLNS Media is powered by Prize Picks, the best place to get in on the action, even throughout the summer. There is still baseball, there's women's basketball, and Taylor, we are right on the cusp of football season. There will be preseason games loaded up on Prize Picks, so if you want to get in on the action, head over to Prize Picks. Use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks again to our friends over at Prize Picks. Red Sox hosting the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight at Fenway to start off a weekend series. Jarren Duran's more or less 1.5 total bases. I like the more. He's on the trade block right now. I think he's going to come out and try and have a good night. And then let's look at pitcher strikeouts. Who are the Red Sox going up against tonight? Emmett Sheehan of the Dodgers. 4.5 is the number. I'm going to go with less. I think the Red Sox hit the ball around the park a little bit tonight, so we'll see what happens there. If you want to get in on the action, head over to Prize Picks right now. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, thank you to Prize Picks. Now back to it with the Patriots. Defensively, Taylor, we mentioned Carlton Davis was back. There was a little bit of a cornerback rotation behind Gonzo and Carlton Davis. What did you see from them, and why was it intriguing?
So it looked like Alex Austin was with the second group. They were on the same field, but they were occupying different halves of it. And really, the main rotation after Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Carlton Davis, the rotation we expect to see as long as those guys are healthy, was Miles Battle, DJ James, and Marcellus Dial. Marcellus Dial, not surprising. We've seen him play inside and out with that top defense. But Miles Battle and DJ James aren't really guys that we see in that rotation a lot. Now, again, once you get down the corner depth chart, at some point when you're doing a wholesale change of the rotations, you know, that's what you're going to get. But Miles Battle, a guy who's 6'3", he's pretty intriguing. And DJ James is someone who's kind of been miscast as a slot corner earlier in his career, getting more opportunities outside. I thought that was pretty interesting. But again, it was such a slow day. Wasn't like there were any plays to be made, but just something I'll be monitoring moving forward and seeing if those guys get more opportunities with the top unit outside of Dial.
Keep an eye on those guys in the secondary. Another defensive note I wanted to mention was K'Lavon Chaisson. Spoke after practice. Someone who came up in the league, was a high draft pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. First, I'll mention that he didn't realize Boston got this hot. It's a pretty hot day out here. I think that's why they slowed things down a little bit. But someone who came up, didn't have great success, dealt with injuries, was kind of labeled a bust to start his career, finishes last year strong with the Raiders, and then comes in here, is given a chance, and seems like he is more than excited and willing to do whatever this team wants to try and win football games. Mike Vrabel actually spoke about Chaisson as well, said that he has untapped potential, so I'm curious to see how they end up using him in that defensive line rotation.
Yeah, Vrabel, like us, is hoping that K'Lavon Chaisson's best football is ahead of him, and I asked K'Lavon what exactly went into his breakout late last season, and he said he wasn't really sure what it was, but he wants to continue to build on it and keep getting better. Also mentioned that Mike Smith has been a really big help for him. Keon White has specifically mentioned Mike Smith as someone who helped him kind of understand more of the mental side of pass rushing and gave him a process that he was lacking in years past. And Chaisson said, yeah, I mean, Mike Smith understands there's no one way to go about being a pass rusher, and some coaches really do have their way and style, and they only coach that. But Mike Smith, having worked with legends in the past and really productive edge rushers, knows that there's bigger guys, there's smaller guys that are quicker, and there's certain things that fit their skill set. Also, Chaisson, who worked out with Max Crosby during the break, mentioned that Mike Smith helped connect him with guys like Zadarius Smith, Justin Houston, Rashawn Gary, really good bigger pass rushers. And I'd say K'Lavon's a bit on the smaller side, but still plenty of things you can learn from guys who've had success in this league like they have. So thought that was really interesting, and obviously excited to see what he can do as someone who I really was sleeping on earlier, thinking like, yeah, he can be a situational rusher. What about Anthony Jennings? What about Braden Swinson? We've seen that K'Lavon Chaisson clearly has a role on this team as one of the top edge rushers.
That's about all we can take away from today's practice. Again, shorter, no pads, no helmets besides the quarterbacks, and only just a little bit over an hour. But tomorrow is supposed to be high intensity. Vrabel mentioned that they were setting the foundation for third down today.
More speed tomorrow,
more speed tomorrow. They'll hit that. So it's going to be exciting, going to be a fun day down here at Gillette Stadium. What are you looking for once they actually ramp it up tomorrow and kind of get themselves ready for pads after the weekend?
I'd like to see the offense finish strong, because I asked Mike Vrabel yesterday, there were no downfield throws. So I was curious, did you feel that the offense maximized its opportunities during the first down script? And he mentioned, like, every day there's going to be good, there's going to be bad, there's going to be the things we got to get rid of. But he did specifically mention that the offense started pretty well and then fell off towards the end and said, hey, we want to make sure that they understand we're in practice preparing for games. In the game, those things just aren't acceptable. And he said, I want to make sure that we see that growth from them. So the offense is going to have to keep that intensity throughout the practice because we know the Patriots defense is going to.
That'll do it for here. That'll do it for us here today on Patriots Daily. Patriots just wrapped up day 3 of training camp. Back again on day 4, Saturday, 10:30 start, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Check your schedules if you're planning on coming down here. But high intensity, more excitement. Speed, a lot of stuff down here, a lot of fans, I'm sure, once the weekend starts. So keep it here on Patriots Press Pass for all of your coverage as they continue to trudge through 2025 training camp. For myself and Taylor Kyles, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.